Okay, here we go. So this demo video is going to talk about throwing bolts. Now that we're moving on from cylinders. So here's an example of a bowl. Pretty simple, nice smooth inside. I'm going to have some examples out in the room, but we want to focus on having just a nice smooth interior curve. We don't want any flat spots, any like transitions. We just want smooth curve. You think about a spoon dragging across this. And we're also going to introduce trimming. If you can see that there, this interior section of the foot ring, this nice tall foot ring. We do that through trimming. And this video will just be throwing. I'm going to trim in the next video. But essentially what is going to happen, and at the end of the video I'm going to cut in half the bowl that I'm making to show this. But instead of throwing this, the foot this narrow, it's going to be thrown out much thicker. And then it's going to get trimmed away. And we'll talk about trimming. Again, trimming will go back with these little loop tools and help almost like carve out or almost like a lathe, trim away the excess clay. So when I'm going to throw the bowl, I'm really only worried about a few things. So I'm worried about this interior curve that's nice and smooth. And I'm going to use the metal rib for that. I want a nice round, soft rim. I don't want it to be too sharp. Just nice and smooth, nice and symmetrical, and round. And then this bottom's going to be left, like I said, nice and thick so that I can trim it later. So the bottom and the outside I'm not going to worry about a whole lot. It's mostly the interior and the rim. For the size of our bowls, we're going to look for about, this one's 5.5 inches wide. So we're going to look for between about 5 and 7 inches. And then we're going to look for about between 4 and 6 inches tall. And again, these are going to shrink. This is a little bit smaller than that now. We got to factor in shrinkage. So between 4 and 6 inches tall, 5 and 7 inches wide. One of the key components of a bowl is that it's wider than it is tall, if you want to think about it like that. All right, so here we go. I'm going to throw a bowl really quick after I turn on my wheel. So again, now we're making something, about 7 inches wide. So we have to center this a little bit wider than the cylinders. Cylinders we're making about 3 inches wide. So I can make this a little bit wider. Okay. Missed the bucket. Alright, so here's my centered ball of clay. And again, centering is just about the same as we were doing with cylinders, except that I'm going to start a little bit wider. Everything here is going to be very similar, but also different. So I'm not going to go straight down. I'm going to go down more to curve because, like I said, we want that smooth curve on the inside. We've got to start establishing that early. In cylinders, we establish that early flat bottom. Now we want a curved bottom. So I'm still going to position my hands the same. I'm going to use my left hand, my left thumb to go down and being pushed down by my right hand. But instead of going down again at a point, I'm going to go down as kind of a length and let my thumb start establishing that curve. Like so. So if you can see that, it's got more of a curved interior. And again, I want to establish that early, compress this early, because I'm going to leave it much thicker. Before we were 1/4 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch. Now we can be like 1/2 of an inch to 3/4 of an inch. Because we're going to, again, turn it over and trim later. What does that mean? We'll talk about it later. I'm going to use this curved, flexible rib now to compress that bottom instead of the straight one. Like so. Again, already nice and smooth, nice curve. I'm going to change this a little bit as I pull what's happening with the inside, but I'm going to go back and reestablish this later. Okay, so I just realized my top camera was not on, so maybe now you can see this inside curve a little bit easier. So I'll start another one after this because of that. Man. So I'm going to go ahead and start polling now. Well, first I'll compress this. And so polling is going to be a little bit different because I don't need to, worry about going straight up and down. A lot of people are having problems with the bolt, with the clay going out and rather than up. And so if that's you, that's going to be really helpful at this point. Now, that's why we learn cylinders first, because going up straight is much more difficult than spinning out wide. So I'm going to still use my left hand on the inside. But instead of trying to use my fingertips to pull, I'm going to just kind of cover this whole space. Because remember, I want to keep that curve on the inside intact. And so with my right hand, I'm just going to push in the same spot, but just push towards my hand, and then just start going up. Like so. And I'll press. And so really, right there after just one pull, this is a bowl. And a pretty good sized one, so I'm probably just going to leave it after this one pull. So, not done yet though, I've got a little bit of cleanup, things I need to do. So I'm going to grab my wooden knife, and I'm going to cut away some of this excess of clay. So again, see how thick that is? After trimming, it's going to look like that. So I'm going to use my rib on the outside to smooth out everything and compress it really well. Like so. And then the inside, through the act of pulling, a little bit of my curve has disappeared, and I want this bowl to be a little bit wider. So I'm going to use this rib, starting at the top, and then just gently start pressing down to create that curve. Now, it's really important when you do this, and it's going to take a few passes, that you go from the top down rather than the bottom up. What then you're going to find is happening is that the clay at the top is much thinner and therefore much weaker, much thicker and stronger at the bottom. So if I go from the top down, I can apply a small bit of pressure to the thinner clay, and then as I hit the thicker clay, I can increase that pressure. But if I do it the opposite way, before I know I'm hitting the thin clay, I'm going to end up wrecking my bowl. Okay. So that looks good. And then at this point, I want to make sure that there's no water on the inside. And then one thing we're going to pay attention to even more now than we did with throwing is the quality of our rims. This is just a little tear of paper towel, and I'm going to get this wet and just very gently roll this over the surface to compress that rim and make it nice and round. And just like that, I have a bowl. So, let's see what it looks like. I guess we're full going. Now we have to start thinking about, that's cut off. Where's my towel? But now that I've cut this off, to pick this up, I'm going to use my middle of my ring finger. You kind of stretch out. If you need to, if your fingers are a little bit shorter and you use different ones, that's fine too. But my main goal here is I can even just try and cup under this if I want, because the bottom of this is so thick. And again, the outside of this is dry. I've ribbed away all the moisture. My hands are really dry. If your hands are wet or the clay is wet, this isn't going to work out very well. And so I'm just going to grab this and my fingertips up by the top. I'm just going to pop the front of it up there at the 12 o'clock position, and then I can just lift up the whole thing. Just like so. Then I'm going to go place this on a wear board. And so it might warp a little bit, but if you just press it down and just gently let it go back into position. At this point, I talked about this with the throwing cylinders. You notice I didn't really touch the clay if it wasn't spinning. Once this is on a board, I'm just going to let it dry. To trim this needs to get to leather hard. So I have to wait for this rim and this interior to get to leather hard, which will happen the quickest because it is much thinner than the rest. And then I can turn it over and let this thick bottom get to leather hard. So, speaking of thick bottoms, let's cut this in half. And take a look. Okay. So look how meaty this is down here. That's what we're looking for. So in the end, this interior space is going to get trimmed out. And then this is all going to get trimmed away. At least a little bit more evenly than that imagery is. But all this is going away. But I need it to put that support in to make that really nice curve. So I'm going to do another one really quick because we lost out on the first camera. Okay, so again, this is about 3 pounds of clay. Centering it like normal, except maybe a little wider. And then I'm going to press down with the curve of my thumb. I'm going to come back inside my rib. So remember about, and you can check this with the needle tool, about about half an inch, 3/4 of an inch for our thickness down there. Compress the rib. It's a little thick right now. And I'm going to go ahead and just, again, lay my left hand, my left fingers on top of this. And then press in with my hand on the outside. And just work my way up. And letting the pressure push myself out. So I go wider. Okay. Press the rim. And again, I was able to do this in one pull. I've made a lot of bowls. It might take you 2, might take you 3. But really, as far as, thinness, thickness, it's this upper half, from like here up, that isn't going to be trimmed. So that's where I'm really worried about it being thinner, is just up here at the top half. So where did my rib go again? So again, this is kind of the hardest part, to make sure that I have this really nice curve on the inside. So I'm just going to gently press down, starting at the top. You just really use this rib, the contour of this rib, to make that round. Now I'm going to compress this with a paper towel. And there we go. And so, after I pulled this, I ribbed the outside, I ribbed the inside, made sure I got rid of all of the excess water. It's going to make this dry a lot faster. Again, I'm just going to, when I use my wire tool, now we have to be a little bit more conscious with how we cut things. I'm going to hold this really tight in my hands like it's dental floss, right? Because if it's loose, it's going to bow up and cut out some of your bottom. And so I'm just going to pull that towards myself, nice and flat. And again, I'm going to spread my ring and index or middle finger out, pop it at 12 o'clock towards me, and then I can lift the whole thing up.